women have a greater capacity for socialization and social skills. You're just going to get dominated by her because you really have to know who you are as a man before you tango with a woman.
That is something that a woman is going to have to look out for. Like, I'm not saying that he's destined to fail, but he is more likely to fail because he just does not even know what it means to go from being on your own for 30 years. You've been focusing on yourself, and then now you're focusing on someone romantically.
You might still have to go through some committed relationships. All I'm saying is that it's smarter as a man to shift that learning time from your 20s to your 30s. Delay it by 10 years. So, so I got an email. You read the email. We won't read the whole email, but essentially this guy had emailed because he's been kind of following my advice and Bulldog Mindset and our advice. He's been watching the podcast. He's young. He's in his 20s, like 27 or so. He hasn't been in any...
25. Going to be 26.
Oh, okay. So he hasn't been in any serious relationships, but he was like asking about like how, you know, he believes in traditional modern relationship, right? The term that we coined, you know, of the best kind of relationship to have. But he said this is a good topic to have, and he asked the same thing for women, by the way. But we'll talk about that. We have an episode that already addressed this. So he said, what should men in their 20s do relationship-wise, assuming goal is modern traditional relationship? Stay single and focus on short-term relationships whilst, I like that he used the word whilst building. Get some relationship experience. I feel like many skills from short-term relationships transfer over, e.g. attraction dynamics, but what about skills only learned in long-term relationships? So it's a good...
Well, and if you want the episode for the younger women looking for a traditional relationship, it's episode 65.
Exactly. And I mean, that's what he... his question for women was, what should women in their 20s do relationship-wise, assuming goals modern traditional relationship? Date older, assuming older equals more successful. Stay single. Prioritize ambition, potential in a man. How do you screen for this? One critique of the modern traditional relationship is there simply aren't enough financially stable men. This won't change. How can a woman bag one of these men? Maybe Nicole could share some girl game hacks. So maybe we could do, I mean, now that I read like the other parts of it, we'll see. But, you know, for now, we'll tackle the male one.
Okay. Well, you go ahead. You're a guy.
Okay. So, well, I mean, my advice, and we talked about this, is for guys to not get into a long-term relationship until they're at least in their 30s. And, you know, really, if I have my way, I would say kind of your mid-30s for most guys.
Yikes.
But there's reasons for this, right? And the reason for, it's like we said, right? And we've talked about this before. We've got a lot of hate about it, but a man has no business dating a woman unless he can financially support her and a child, right? Because at least at a serious dating, right? Like dating for, you know. And so most men are not at that capacity in their 20s. They're not going to be there until their 30s. And most guys will say, a lot of guys will say, no one's going to, I'm not even going to get there. And that's because you're screwing around in your 20s. And maybe you should not have been in some serious relationships in your 20s. And if you were just on your purpose and focusing on a man, on building yourself as a man, getting to the gym, making money, you know, doing the stuff that's going to establish, like reading books, establishing yourself as a man, then by the time you got to your 30s, you would have enough money to support a woman and children if that's what you desired, right? So that's where my advice comes from, is this idea that, and it also takes men longer to mature. And again, these things that are more valuable in a man, right? Because we've done the episode and we talked about how youth and beauty is what's prized in a woman, right? But for a man, it's status, it's power, it's you know, and even just masculine attributes themselves, right? So attributes. So the feminine it exists without anything. Like a woman is born and she's feminine by default. There's nothing that has, like, what happens is the world actually defeminizes her and creates a bunch of stuff on top of that. But a woman born, you know, the purity of a woman is beautiful. The feminine is already there. A man is not born masculine. A man is a little boy, and most men continue to be little boys, and then they die. But a man can become masculine, and it requires battle and fighting demons and forging himself. And so that's why it's different, that a man should probably be in his 30s. He should be older because he has to develop that experience and that masculinity in order to be able to show up for a woman. Because if you're just a guy in his 20s and you haven't developed your masculinity and you get into a committed relationship with a woman, which I've done it, most guys have, you're just going to get your ass run over. Like, she's just going to run you over because you're playing a game. You're racing against an Olympic athlete. Women understand have a greater capacity for socialization and social skills. You're just going to get dominated by her. Like, you're not going to have the ability to, because you really have to know who you are as a man before you tango. What is it? Tangle with a woman?
Tango.
Yeah. Tango or tangle, whichever one. Get tangled.
Yeah. That makes sense that, if he focuses on establishing himself, that it's better for him in the long run and he'll actually have more options. And I get that. And the guy mentioned in the email that I had said before that it is a red flag. And I do think it is still somewhat a red flag. Like, maybe not in the instance that, like, it's a green flag that he'll establish his masculinity and he'll be more in his masculine and things like that. But it is still a red flag. And I would tell any woman that came to me and was like, I've met a 35-year-old man who's never been in a relationship. I'd be like, that is something to watch out for. Yeah. Like, it would be harmful for me to not say that.
I agree.
Because, and like with this guy who wrote in, I do think he has a lot of emotional intelligence. He's able to reflect on himself, and that's very important. And I think he can learn a lot without having the experience.
Right.
However, I do think a lot of times you need the experience.
100%,
and like, even though you might be a masculine man, you've never really led anybody. Like, even if you've led employees, like, yes, that is somewhat a way, but it's not, you're not leading your partner. You're not one person, like, becoming one with another person. Like, you haven't considered someone else to the extent that you really need to in a relationship, and you can't even really fathom it until you get in a relationship. And so, like, that is something that a woman is going to have to look out for. Like, I'm not saying that he's destined to fail, but he is more likely to fail because he just does not even know what it means to go from being on your own for 27 years. Well, at that, you say they shouldn't until they're 30. So for 30 years, you've been focusing on yourself.
Right.
And then now you're focusing on someone romantically. Like, that is a huge difference.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I agree 100%. But I still think that you should. So here's what I'll say is that, so everything you're saying is correct, right? In the sense that it's just like if you get your first job, right? Mm-hmm. You got to get your first job at some point. But, when I look at your resume and you got no job experience, I'm like, it is a red flag, right? It's like, but hey, you're like, no, give me a chance. Like, I've worked on my skills. I'm a hard worker. It's like, okay.
If you have other criteria backing it up, which this guy seems like he does have, and if he continues to get the knowledge from either watching this or reading books or whatever, talking to his friends that are in a relationship, like, then I do think it'd be fine. And he is qualified to take the risk. But if the man is not, because to be honest, I knew and heard of plenty of men that at 30 who still aren't ready for a relationship, who still aren't masculine, who still aren't,
majority
in that place.
Majority of men,
Right. So like, it is a big deal from a woman's perspective.
Right. But this is what it is. But before we scare away all the guys that are like, oh yeah, see, Nicole's saying this. Let me say this, which is that if a woman is dating a guy that's never been in a serious relationship, and she asks him about it, and he's like, yeah, I've never been in a serious relationship. But if he's intentional in it, there's a huge difference, right? Because if he says, I purposely have not been in a serious relationship because I wanted to establish myself. I wanted to make sure I took care of the things. And I want to make sure that when I do get in a relationship with a woman, that I can take care of her. Right. That it's important to me that I have a child, I take care of that child, that she doesn't have to work. That's why I haven't been in a serious relationship. That, to me, there's still
that's also very rare. But that is a difference.
But that's what we're teaching.
Right.
And that's what, like, so
right. So if you want a traditional modern, this is what you have to do. But if you just want to vibe, do whatever you want, I guess.
Yeah. If you want to be in a traditional modern relationship, you know, modern traditional, what do we call it? Traditional, modern traditional. Or traditional,
traditional modern relationship, I think.
Whichever one. You can
either way.
If you swap it, we'll still take credit for it. But, you know, but if you want that as a man, right, then you should be intentional about this and be thinking, okay, I know that in my 30s or my 40s, that's when I'm going to actually settle down and be the man that, and I'm still going to have to learn, right? You might still have to go through some committed relationships, right? But all I'm saying is that it's smarter as a man to shift that learning time from your 20s to your 30s, delay it by 10 years. Right? Because you still got 30s and 40s. Like you can still get into, and get married and all that. So don't spend your 20s where it's probably not even going to be worth it. Like spend the 20s building yourself, building your business, making money, building your career, establishing yourself as a man, the things that you can learn on your own.
As long as that's what he's actually doing, which I believe the emailer is. Right. But I believe a lot of men aren't. And then they're going through their 20s. They have no standards. Yeah. They're just hooking up with people.
Yeah,
they're living this bachelor lifestyle, and they haven't really worked on themselves.
And that's the thing about it too, is it's like you have to be intentional with this because, because
a woman will take a risk on a man if she knows what you just said. If she knows and he has proven to her that he's been intentional and it has been working on himself and not just lollygagging for his 20s and trying to hook up with anything that breeds. Yeah. Because the reality is, though, that a lot of men might confuse what we're saying. They hear, oh, I'm not supposed to settle down until 30. So they're like, ooh, okay, party until 30 and then get it all together.
Here's the hard
at the last minute.
Okay, so let me give you the bitter medicine, right? Because, and before I say that, like a guy that's intentional about this, it's a super green flag for a woman, right? It's like, as opposed to a red flag. But here's the thing about it. Here's the bitter medicine. Maybe I didn't say this. I didn't vocalize it to you because I just thought it was understood. But the bitter pill of this is that you should really be don't even concern yourself too much with women in your 20s, right? Okay, you want to casually date a little bit here to get a little bit of experience or whatever, okay, fine. But, and maybe you need a little bit of it to be able to learn some game, some skills just to understand that dynamic. But that shouldn't be your focus. Your focus is on building your business, on going to the gym, on working on yourself, on reading books and developing your masculinity. So that also means like
having standards.
It means like go follow Jason Lamar on Instagram. The guy I interviewed.
That is.
He's the guy that's like, don't be a bitch. It's like, but he's like, he says some pretty harsh stuff, right? But he also says no alcohol, like no drug, like he's very much towing the line, like get on your purpose, get on your mission. So it's not. I'm not giving you a decade to fuck around. Like that's not the plan.
But I think that needs to be said because if it's not said, it will be turned into that is because you're just going to be not say it.
Because the whole point of this is like then it's just stupid because now you're just like
I agree.
You're just like instead of being a dumb 20-year-old who doesn't know anything about anything and is not going to be a quality man. Now you're just a dumb 30-year-old who doesn't know anything about it. And now it's worse.
Unfortunately, that happens. Yeah. Quite a bit.
And you're more dumb because you're now even more of a...
Right, you're older and you don't know.
And there's no
it's like, what have you been doing for the past 10 years?
So you should be applying yourself as a man. Like you should avoid alcohol. There's no need for that. Like it's just not. Like I used to be like, oh, whatever. And hey, I'm not going to judge people, but I'm just saying like are you an idiot? Like with the knowledge that you have.
I'm not going to judge people, but are you an idiot?
Well, I'm saying that like I'm not going to treat someone poorly because that's why I say, but are you an idiot? Like really, like all the stuff that you know about alcohol that you've heard us talk about that, like why would you do that? Like it's just stupid. It doesn't make any sense.
It mostly comes from a place of fitting in and,
which is stupid. Like, are you your man? Are you a masculine man? Are you your own man? Or are you someone else's bitch, right? Like, that's what it comes down to is because if it's to fit in, then that's what you're like, that's not developing your masculinity.
Well, that also makes a woman not trust you if you're just going to do stuff to fit in.
Right,
as
exactly.
well, too.